Hey, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Answers on Eschatology. My name is Dan Derry, and I am the president of the Institute of Fulfilled Eschatology. We have been in the middle of a study on Matthew chapter 24 for a while now. I think we're on video 41 or so. And if you haven't got up to speed, go back and watch the videos. They're only between 7 and 10 minutes of video. Easy to get caught up on them in a day if you wanted to, maybe a couple days or a weekend. But go do that and join us. It's been an awesome study so far, and we've got lots more to share. So in this video, I really want to go through just several verses, verses 16 to 20, and really cover a little bit of ground fast here, and we'll set ourselves up for next video getting into the Great Tribulation. But what I simply want to do in today's video is show you the historical and the Jewish context of what Jesus was telling his disciples would happen and what they were to do when these things happened, okay? I want us to keep audience relevance and historical context in the forefront as we go through these verses today, okay? Now, remember, from our last video, and really the last several videos, we established that the abomination of desolation was the Roman armies that surrounded Jerusalem beginning in 66 AD. And we established that by comparing Matthew 24, 15 and following with Luke 21, 20 and following. And the parallels are beautiful. I put a chart on my website. The information is on the last video. So once again, go check out the chart, look at the last video. And I say that because where we're jumping in today is at the time of the Great Tribulation, of the abomination of desolation, or at the time that Jerusalem is surrounded by armies. Now listen to this. Let's go in verse 15, and we'll read down to 20, and then we'll look at some things here. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation, which was spoken of through Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, let the reader understand. That's the same as saying, when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies. Okay? So when they were to see the abomination of desolation, i.e. Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then, verse 16, those who are in Judea must flee to the mountains. Whoever is on the housetop must not go down to get the things that are in his house. Whoever is in the field must not turn back to get his cloak. But woe to those who are pregnant and to those who are nursing babies in those days. But pray that your flight will not be in winter or on a Sabbath. For then will be great tribulation, such as has not occurred since the beginning of the world, nor ever will. Now listen, this basically proves our last several videos that when the abomination of desolation would occur, when they would see that abomination of desolation, then would be great tribulation. That is the same as saying, when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then will be great tribulation. And Luke actually says when they would see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then those days would be the days of vengeance. The days of vengeance are the great tribulation. Okay, so once again, parallel texts, Matthew 24, Luke 21, and of course, Mark 13 as well. But here's what I want to say in this video. I just want to go through these several verses, and once again, notice the historical context, the audience relevance, and the Jewish context, the Hebrew and first century Jewish context of these verses. Let's take a look. When they receive the abomination of desolation, or Jerusalem surrounded by armies, verse 16 says, then those who are in Judea must flee to the mountains. Judea. Notice, those who are in Judea. Why didn't he say those who are in the U.S., those who are in Canada, those who are in China, those who are in Australia? Because this was a Jewish persecution. I shouldn't say just Jewish. It was a Jewish world persecution. It was Christians and Jews that would be persecuted in the Great Tribulation, but it was focused on Judea from 66 to 70. Okay? So those who are in Judea must flee to the mountains because the days of vengeance were coming upon Jerusalem and Judea. Now, here's the next point. Whoever's on the housetop must not come down to get the things out of his house. This is another Jewish first century context. Okay? Now, I understand people still, eat, sleep, dwell on the housetops in the Middle East in certain parts of the world. I'm not denying that. That still takes this still has a cultural reference today in certain parts of the world. But for you and me, this is, when's the last time you were on the housetop? Unless maybe you got a flat roof. But those who are on the housetop must not come down to get the things out of the house. And the idea here is that these houses are close together and they can just kind of jump from housetop to housetop or walk across little walkways from housetop to housetop without coming down. They can essentially get to the wall of the city or to the edge of the city, come down and go out a gate. So this again is Jewish first century context. Okay, now next verse, verse 18, whoever's in the field must not turn back to get his cloak. Again, this can be applied today, obviously. There are farmers, there are people who still are agrarian in their culture and in their in what they do, how they make their living. But for the most part, most of us are not farmers today. And this whoever's in the field does not apply to 95% of people, right? This was a cultural expression. Those who are in the field, they were in the field every day, most of them. Okay? But those who are in the field were to not turn back to get their cloak. Okay, they weren't to go back into the city. Once again, a first century, a Jewish context. Verse 19, but woe to those who are pregnant and to those who are nursing babies in those days, but pray that your flight will not be in winter or on a Sabbath. Now here is a powerful one. Pray that your flight won't be on the Sabbath. This was spoken to a people who were under law, who kept the Sabbath. Do you keep the Sabbath today? Really keep it. I'm not talking about, no, I don't work. I don't do my job on Sunday. I go to church. I don't try not to do too much. But do you keep the Sabbath? Do you kindle a fire on the Sabbath? Do you walk more than 2,000 cubits on the Sabbath? Which I understand wasn't really a lie. It became a Jewish practice, a tradition by the rabbis. But there was many things on the Sabbath that they couldn't do. Prepare food. Do you prepare food and meals on the Sabbath? Do you keep the Sabbath? No, most of us don't. We understand that the Sabbath has been fulfilled in Christ, right? Colossians chapter 2:15 and following. Those things, those feasts and feast days and new moons, they were types of better things to come, but the substance is found in Jesus Christ. He is our Sabbath rest. So once again, this is spoken to people who were under law, who kept the Sabbath. Now listen, here's a cool text. Go with me to Acts chapter 1 and 12 and listen what Jesus says here. This is what Luke says in chapter 1, verses 11 to 12 of Acts. They also said, Men of Galilee, why do you stand looking into the sky? This Jesus who has been taken up from you into heaven will come in just the same way as you have watched him go into heaven. So this is just after the ascension. And listen to what it says next. Then they returned to Jerusalem from the mount called Olivet, which is near Jerusalem, a Sabbath's day journey. Approximately 2,000 cubits, or just under 3/5 of a mile. So this expression, a Sabbath's day journey, was a common expression in first century Judaism. And Jesus said, pray that your journey would not be on the Sabbath, because they wouldn't travel any more than a half a mile or so on the Sabbath. And if this great tribulation, if Jerusalem was surrounded by armies on the Sabbath, and their chance to flee was on the Sabbath, they wouldn't do it. Most of them wouldn't do it, because most of them, even Jewish Christians, kept the law up until it was totally abolished in AD 70. You can go to Acts 21 to see that. But here's the point, guys. Here's the point in Matthew chapter 24, that everything Jesus is telling his disciples that they should do, and in situations that they would be in and they would pray not to be in, were first century Jewish contexts, okay? This doesn't apply to a great tribulation that's coming upon our day, and an abomination of desolation that's coming in our day, and when Jerusalem's surrounded by armies in our day, that we should flee to the mountains, that we should come off of our housetops, and that we should pray that that doesn't happen on the Sabbath that we're not keeping. Okay, guys, Matthew chapter 24 is submersed. It's inundated in a first century Jewish context because that's when it was spoken and that's when it would be fulfilled. Anyways, that's all for today. I could go on and on about that, but we have lots more to say and we'll have to pick it up next time on Answers on Eschatology. Bye for now.